Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this terrific, I nearly said Thursday. It's actually Tuesday. And I was going to have a day off today because we are moving. We're moving stuff. It's mental. I've got loads to do. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a day off. But then someone left a comment yesterday. And I thought, that comment. I've got to share this comment, right? Because it's important. It's important in the grander scheme of things to understand that everyone was lied to. In the Idaho 4 case, everyone was lied to. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. I hope you know that. But yeah, we was all lied to. And what do I mean by that, right? I want you to listen, especially if you're a guilter. But everybody around the Idaho 4 case needs to listen to this. And this is from Road Trek Rich. Hello, my friend. Good comment. I'll put it on the screen so you can see it. I think that side. While I read it to you. But it says, "Hi, Harsh. What stands out to me is that the narrative first law enforcement, then the prosecution has tried to put out isn't what happened. With the trial rapidly approaching, I think that it is most important, or the most important takeaway. The victims weren't quietly dispatched in their rooms in their sleep. The roommates weren't frozen in shock or oblivious to something happening. What I think is being validated is that law enforcement and prosecution have been seeking to hide, suppress, conceal, fabricate, manipulate, misinform, misrepresent, and misspeak about this case from day one. If these entities were a person with the same behaviour, we would say it points to guilt regarding something. What is it these people are guilty of? Based on their actions, they certainly can't be trusted. What would a person be who would believe whatever comes out of law enforcement, prosecution, the state's mouth next?" And think about that for a second. What Road Trek Rich is saying is, bearing in mind how much we've seemingly been lied to around this case, do you think it would be a bit silly to just turn around, let me just get that off the screen, to turn around and now trust everything that they're saying? Because did they lie to us? Were we lied to? Well, of course we were. Because this has been, and it's still being pushed as if someone entered into this home, well, everyone was asleep. And that's why it was so silent. No one heard anything. They heard these very subtle sounds, like thought they were playing with a dog, thought they heard someone say, "I'm here to help." But the rest was silent. Despite evidence from outside of law enforcement, outside of prosecutors. We're talking about actual family members being out there in the public and telling us all that there was one hell of a fight, telling us about some of the injuries that were sustained. You've got other information coming out that one of these rooms they couldn't even get into, Xana and Ethan's door, they couldn't even open it because seemingly they're in the doorway. So they weren't asleep in their beds and attacked, and the rest is history. You know, what was it that we found that Kaylee was sitting up in bed, was it? Kaylee was sitting up. We've got other stories of someone going up the stairs, someone coming down the stairs. But the most important takeaway is they weren't asleep. They weren't asleep. But they want you to believe that because it does away with a lot of questions, mainly around the two surviving roommates and the fact that they seemingly didn't hear anything, despite the recent revelations in the communications from 1122 King Road in the aftermath of this atrocity, which raises massive, massive questions again. So, have we been lied to? Have we been lied to? What is it? What Road Trek said? The frozen in shock phase. Frozen in shock phase. Were they frozen? Didn't look frozen to me. Not all of the communication. It doesn't actually look like they slept at all that night. At all. There was literally communication and activity online throughout the entire period. So I don't know why people who, if you say, well, that looks odd, that looks bizarre, that there are people out there who are like, I don't believe that there are people out there who supports the possibility of Bryan Kohberger or that narrative that we're being fed as not being right. Now, look, I could even go as far as to say, okay, then what if Bryan Kohberger's involved? I still think that that's a stretch to say that one person did this absolutely on their own, and it just happened to be Bryan Kohberger. If you're saying that he's so fucking stupid that he drove his own car, he bought the weapon online, he then went to order a replacement, he's driving around the estate like he's, I don't know, like he's lost, and he's getting caught on every single possible fucking camera he could. Do you know what I mean? And then uploading a picture or taking a selfie at the... I don't think he uploaded it, but taking a selfie, so there's a record of almost what everybody are now saying it's a trophy picture. But you're now supposed to believe what they said. The more and more lies, like I said yesterday, and I've said it multiple times, the time advance reports, which I feel are the absolute key to this. The absolute key, because you're trying to place Kohberger in an area doing a crime using circumstantial evidence, while trying to say that actual physical evidence, stuff that you can actually, that's tangible, that don't exist. And one of the very entities that were handling this, being the FBI, had access to this very report and most likely already had Bryan Kohberger under surveillance. One at Sahara, who had made a statement surrounding Bryan Kohberger and how a lot of equipment, there was expensive equipment being put out there. Did someone say Stingray? Do you know what I mean? That there was extensive effort being placed around this situation. What, for something that they didn't know what was going to happen? Who are truly the foolish people? The people who absolutely and without question will believe what law enforcement say, what the prosecution says, despite consistently being told stuff that isn't right and allowing things to be said that isn't right. And what do I mean by that? The whole PCA, a weaponized PCA, that rather than sticking to facts, they had to form this stalker narrative when it would appear that wasn't the case. Yeah, they knew where Bryan Kohberger was. And Ann Taylor, again, left you a tidbit there, didn't she? By saying, but you knew where he was on these times. You knew where he went. You knew where he didn't go. You know how long he stayed and when his car was moving and when it went. So they had all that information. They've got it all. But instead, they chose to push it as a stalker narrative. All I want people to do is have a bit of an open mind, and it's comments like this that shows that there are people out there that are willing to just step back and say, hold on a second. There's been a lot of statements made that they just ain't right. They ain't true. They're just... And we're talking about adding another body to an already atrocious situation. You know, it's families, and I know not all of them we agree with how they've behaved and reacted, but people lost their children. And at the very least, those that lost their lives deserve to have justice, to get justice, and the right person to be held accountable. And we've got other DNA at the scene of the crime. And when do we find out about that? What, nearly 2 years down the line? They knew that right at the start. So why weren't they doing their due diligence with it? Because the FBI told them not to. Why did the FBI tell them not to? And to look at this person? And we could go on. I'll go live again tomorrow. Join me. We'll have a chat. Mwah.